Is Taylor Swift finally living the fairy tale, or rewriting it on her own terms? Just when fans thought she'd said it all with the Tortured Poets department, Taylor dropped something no one expected. A vibrant, glimmering, defiant surprise album, Life of a Showgirl. But this isn't just a musical pivot. It's personal, strategic, and packed with messages that fans and critics are still decoding. In under 48 hours, Showgirl shattered streaming records, topped charts across Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon, and sent Swifties into full breakdown mode. But here's what most people missed. This album is part catharsis, part comeback, and all control. From reclaiming her masters to reclaiming her joy, this is Taylor Swift at her most powerful, playful, and self-aware. So how did she go from writing heartbreak manifestos to singing in gemstones? Why did she reveal the album title on her boyfriend's podcast just hours before saying yes to a secret proposal? And what's really behind the lyrics that seem to wink at the entire music industry? This video isn't just about the songs. It's about the strategy behind the sparkle, the Easter eggs in plain sight, the emotional blueprint hidden in her metaphors. Because if you think Life of a Showgirl is just another era, you're not paying attention. This album is everything I feel right now. That's what Taylor said, twice, during her Tonight Show sit-down. For someone who once called herself the Tortured Poet, that shift means more than it sounds. Just a year ago, the Tortured Poets department showed us a version of Swift most fans had never seen before, bleak, raw, literary. It was an album made in the aftermath of heartbreak, public scrutiny, and personal reckoning. She even described it as something she had to write, but couldn't enjoy performing. Release week meant just putting my phone in a drawer, she admitted. But with Showgirl, Taylor is smiling, joking, performing, and letting fans sing back every word with her. So what changed? At its core, Life of a Showgirl isn't just an album. It's a reclamation of fun, of glamour, of control. It's no coincidence that this era began not with a single or an interview, but with a secret hidden in the New Heights podcast she did with Travis Kelce. What appeared to be a casual moment was actually the rollout of a year-long surprise project. And, as we later found out, the same day she got engaged. More than ever, this version of Taylor is operating on her own timeline. No label leaks, no tabloid scoops, no expectations. She's driving the narrative. But the biggest difference? Emotion. Where Tortured Poets was built on heartbreak and helplessness, Showgirl is built on wit, sparkle, and biting lines that hit just as hard, without the sadness. And yet it's still layered, still coded, still 100% her. As she put it, I wanted this album to be flirty and funny, but still raw in a different way. This is me having fun, but not forgetting what I've been through. If Poets was about survival, Showgirl is about resurrection. You have to choose happiness. It doesn't always choose you. That one line, delivered casually by Taylor Swift, might be the quiet heart of Life of a Showgirl. And it lives inside one of the album's most emotionally layered tracks, Opalite. When Taylor first explained the song on The Tonight Show, it seemed simple. Opalite, she said, is a man-made opal, much like lab-grown diamonds, pretty, delicate, artificial. But beneath that, it becomes a symbol for something much deeper, creating your own light when the world refuses to give it to you. And if you know anything about Taylor Swift's last few years, you know that message isn't theoretical. After public heartbreaks, intense online scrutiny, and losing the rights to her own music, Swift has spent the last 5 years doing one thing: rebuilding. Not just her reputation, but her joy, her identity, her control. Opalite is about what happens when you stop waiting for healing to find you and start building it yourself. The lyrics feel almost mythic. Lines like "Onyx night, now the sky is opalite," mix gemstones and celestial images to paint a world where beauty is forged, not found. Fans have interpreted it as a metaphor for faking it until you feel it, or even crafting the version of yourself the world refuses to see. And then there's the performance. When Taylor played Opalite for the audience, something surreal happened. Every single person knew the words, even though the song hadn't even been on the radio yet. It was a viral moment that proved two things. Swifties don't need a charting single to commit, and this track had already struck an emotional nerve. But it's the subtext that hits hardest. This is a woman who's reclaimed her narrative, her music, and now her joy. And she's using a fake gemstone to tell a very real truth. Happiness, like Opalite, isn't always natural. Sometimes you have to forge it from scratch. You know, in Happy Gilmore, when he goes to his happy place. Of all the metaphors Taylor Swift could have used to describe a deeply personal love song, she chose a 90s Adam Sandler movie. But once you hear her explain it, Wishlist becomes one of the most emotionally resonant moments on Life of a Showgirl. In the film, Happy Gilmore escapes the chaos of life by imagining a surreal, happy place, a world full of dancing grannies, slot machines, and peace. In Wishlist, Taylor takes that same idea and turns it into a song. But instead of comedy, it's romantic survival. This isn't just another love song. It's about building an entire world, mentally and emotionally, where you can feel safe. And for Taylor, that world doesn't include fame, gossip, or flashing cameras. It just includes him. All you want is you. That lyric from the chorus hits like a gentle hammer. It's not, I want the world. It's not even, I want us. It's, I want you. A single person in the middle of madness. The wish, the fantasy, the constant. And when she sings about things like a basketball hoop, fans instantly know who she's talking about. This isn't subtle. It's specific, personal. Taylor jokes in the interview that she learned about sports for this man, not because she wanted to play, but because she wanted to understand his world. So Wishlist becomes a sonic safehouse, a soft place in a hard world. The happy place metaphor turns into a real relationship ritual, something she returns to in her mind whenever the noise gets too loud. But here's where the song gets sneakier. It's deceptively simple. Sonically light, lyrically sweet, and yet it reveals a lot about where Taylor is emotionally. After years of songs rooted in betrayal and exposure, Wishlist is the rare one rooted in trust, and even more rare, in stability. She doesn't want chaos anymore. She wants calm. And she's found someone who lets her build it. You guys sound fantastic, she tells the audience. But it's not just flattery, it's relief. Because for once, she's not just singing about what she wants. She's living it. I wanted to do something timeless. It started with knocking on wood. That's how Taylor describes the creative beginning of W0D, a song that opens like a superstition and ends like a breakdown. The title itself, stylized as W0D, immediately suggests something modernized, maybe even digitized. But the theme? Deeply human, the illusion of control. Knock on wood is a phrase we say to keep bad things at bay. But in Taylor's hands, it becomes something darker, a ritual we use when we know we're not in control at all. What began as a quirky idea, superstitions, knock on wood beats, throwback vibes, slowly morphed into one of the album's most unhinged emotional journeys. Taylor admitted as much herself. I don't know what happened, man. We went off the rails, and you can hear it. The song spirals sonically, layering harmonies over pulsing percussion and anxious instrumentation. Lyrically, it hints at trying to hold a life together with tape and luck. There's something chaotic and unglued here, and it perfectly mirrors the pressure she's under, publicly, romantically, and creatively. It started in a very innocent place. That's the line that really sticks, because so much of Taylor's work and her fame has followed that same arc. From teen country sweetheart to global megastar with NDAs and stalkers, her life also started innocently, And just like this song, it didn't stay that way. In a way, boldest is the sound of that transition. From safe to unsafe, from flirty to feral, from control to chaos, and fans noticed. When boldest leaked just before the album dropped, the reactions were instant. This is her reputation X folklore moment. I don't know whether to dance or call my therapist. Exactly the point, because boldest captures something we don't often see in polished pop. The moment you realize superstition won't save you, and neither will good intentions. This is one of those songs that starts playful and ends painful. It tricks you. And Taylor loves to trick you. I love this song so much, she told Fallon. But her tone? A little nervous. A little knowing, like she knows how close this one cuts. You don't know the life of a showgirl. It's not just a lyric. It's a warning, a wink, a dare. For Taylor Swift, the title track of Life of a Showgirl is more than catchy. It's coded. This song doesn't just encapsulate the theme of the album, it delivers the thesis statement of the entire era. Fame is a performance, and everyone is watching, but no one really sees. Taylor had the title in her notes app for months. No song attached, no beat, just a phrase she couldn't shake. And once the rest of the album started forming, she knew Showgirl had to be the centerpiece. This is where the playfulness begins to shift into critique. In the song, she creates a character who is glamorous, messy, desirable, untouchable, a woman who gives the world a performance but hides the truth in makeup, mirrors, and practiced poses. It's Taylor, obviously, but it's also all of us. We all have a public life now, she said in the interview. Social media, digital footprints, parasocial relationships. Every one of us is on some kind of stage, and Showgirl makes that terrifyingly catchy. But the real twist in the song? Sabrina Carpenter. Taylor said it plainly. She was the first person I thought of, and it shows. Sabrina sings the second verse with a perfect blend of satire and sass. The lines are sharp, cinematic, and ruthless. She was a menace, the baby of the family in Lennox. Her father whored around like all men did. Her mother took pills and played tennis. It's camp, it's brutal, it's hilarious, and it's so Sabrina. Taylor called her the quintessential showgirl, not because of the glitter, but because of how she handles the chaos. Sabrina knows how to be soft and savage at once. It's what makes her one of the few artists who can handle a lyric like that with a grin. In just under 3 minutes, Showgirl manages to satirize fame, critique the media, celebrate femininity, and remind you this is all a show. And still, it's fun, it's flirty. It's the soundtrack of someone who's been chewed up and spit out, and decided to wear sequins anyway. This was always supposed to be humorous, Taylor said. But humor here is a survival skill, because being a showgirl isn't about being seen. It's about staying standing after the curtain falls. I love you, but you are not serious people. If you know that line, you already understand the DNA of father figure. Taylor Swift admits she was obsessed with the show's Succession, and specifically with that scene where Logan Roy dismisses his children with brutal clarity. That same energy bleeds through every verse of Father Figure, one of the most ruthless tracks on Life of a Showgirl. This isn't a love song. It's a war story, set from the perspective of a mentor to their protege. Father Figure flips the traditional power dynamic into something darker. It's part sermon, part diss track. Taylor isn't whispering here, she's lecturing, and it's devastating. The lyrics drip with condescension and rage. I protected you, I directed you, and this is how you do me. There's betrayal here, deep betrayal. And the father figure isn't necessarily male. It's a symbol of power, knowledge, and sacrifice. It could be a producer, a former friend, a publicist, or even a metaphor for Swift herself and how she's been treated by people she's helped. But here's the genius. Even though it's written from the mentor's POV, Taylor admitted she also relates deeply to the prodigy, the younger one. The rising star, the one who's underestimated, then punished for outshining the teacher, and that duality makes the song electric. "That's why I love it so much," she said, "because she's lived both roles, the one who was betrayed and the one accused of betrayal. It's also why the lyric that made fans stop and rewind is so chilling. You made a deal with the devil and now you come crawling back." Savage, biblical, almost theatrical. The production mirrors the lyrics, clean, commanding, with sharp instrumental breaks that feel like emotional slaps. There's no softness here. This isn't folklore. This is the Reputation venom with Midnight's polish. It's mentor mode with a dagger, and fans are already dissecting the Easter eggs. Is it about a former collaborator? A warning to young artists? A mirrored letter to her past self? Truth is, it might be all of them. Because in Father Figure, Taylor does what she does best. She tells a story that feels personal and universal, specific and mythic. And in doing so, she reminds us, just like Logan Roy, that love and power rarely coexist without damage. He had it for a really long time before he gave it to me. That's Taylor talking about her engagement ring. But the line could just as easily apply to the entire Life of a Showgirl rollout. Because while fans were busy decoding lyrics and watching her announce her new album title on New Heights, the football podcast hosted by her boyfriend Travis Kelce and his brother Jason, Taylor was hours away from saying yes to a surprise proposal. Let that sink in. She revealed the name of her most playful, self-aware and glittery album on a sports podcast, and by the time the episode aired, she was already engaged. If the Tortured Poets department was all about emotional chaos, Showgirl is all about strategic serenity. Taylor didn't just find love, she timed its reveal like a chess master. "He used the podcast as a distraction," she said, laughing. Curtains pulled, backyard draped in florals. No leaks, no cameras. No pressure, just them and a plan, but more than the proposal itself. It's what this moment symbolizes that ties directly back to the music. Wishlist is about wanting one person above all else. Opalite is about creating your own joy. Showgirl is about the performance of perfection. And this moment, it's the real version of all three. "I'm just vibing," Taylor said during release week. And it wasn't fake. It wasn't forced, because she wasn't selling us an image. She was living one. What's most stunning is how private this entire relationship has remained in an era of constant exposure. And that's intentional. Taylor has learned, the hard way, what happens when your personal life becomes content. This time she took back control. No magazine spread. No exclusive deal. No Vogue cover holding up the ring, just a surprise album. And a reveal hidden in plain sight, and yet fans were watching. Every movement, every word, every second, because when Taylor Swift moves in silence, that's when she's making her loudest statements. Engagement? Yes. Announcement? No. Ownership of the moment? 100%. My heart's racing. I just want this to be what you hoped it would be. To anyone listening to that New Heights podcast episode, those words probably sounded like Travis Kelce was just nervous to do a rare couples interview. But in hindsight, that racing heart wasn't about a mic check. It was about a proposal. What the public didn't see was what Taylor Swift later confirmed. The New Heights interview, where she casually revealed the title of Life of a Showgirl, wasn't just an album announcement. It was a decoy, a soft launch, a distraction. "He used it to keep me from looking out the window," she joked. Because in the backyard, just out of view, something was being built. A literal secret garden. A moment, months in the making. It's the kind of play only someone who has lived through the brutality of overexposure could master. Because Taylor has learned, time and time again, that controlling the rollout means protecting the meaning. She could have posted a close-up of the ring. She could have staged a photo op with Travis. She could have monetized the engagement with a brand collab and a Pinterest board of flower arrangements. Instead, She let fans catch it after the fact, after the episode dropped, after the album announcement, after the celebration, and that delay made it feel real. In an age where celebrity relationships often feel like marketing, this one felt authentic precisely because it wasn't sold. It was lived, then shared on her terms. And here's the brilliance. While the media was busy quoting album titles and passing podcast jokes, the bigger story, the engagement, was already over. It had happened. It was hers. It's the ultimate PR sleight of hand. Let them focus on the shiny thing, while the real story unfolds behind blackout curtains and garden gates. This was the best possible case scenario, she said. And for once, she didn't mean album sales or reviews. She meant the moment, the memory, the silence. Because in a world that demands constant content, Taylor Swift has reclaimed something even more powerful: privacy. Can you imagine? He's out there putting his body on the line, and I'm like, should I do 2 verses of Shake It Off or go straight into blank space? Only Taylor Swift could turn down the Super Bowl halftime show and make it sound like a romantic gesture. This year, rumors swirled across social media and news headlines. Taylor Swift rejected the Super Bowl because she couldn't own her performance footage. It sounded bold, empowering, on-brand, and completely false. Jay-Z has always been good to me, she clarified in the interview. The real reason, Travis. Because while the world watches football once a year, Taylor Swift watches it every week. Not as a pop star, not as a performer, but as a girlfriend, cheering from the sidelines, tracking every down, every hit, every win. That's violent chess. Gladiators without swords. She's not exaggerating. Football is one of the most physically brutal sports in the world, and her fiancé is at the center of it. So when people ask why she didn't take the stage at the biggest live event of the year, her answer is simple: she didn't want to split her attention. In the past, Taylor has balanced eras, tours, heartbreaks, and headlines like a pro. But this moment, it's different. She didn't want to be the halftime show. She wanted to be in the stands. Let me have one thing. The tone in her voice isn't sarcastic. It's sincere. For a woman who's given the world everything: music, vulnerability, scandal, spectacle. This is the one thing she wanted to keep for herself. Being fully present for someone else's spotlight. And here's the thing no one talks about. Turning down the Super Bowl isn't a career risk when you're Taylor Swift. She doesn't need it. Her tours sell out stadiums globally. Her surprise drops break streaming records. Her albums spark more online discourse than most presidential debates. So for her, saying no wasn't rejection, it was recalibration. She chose love over legacy. Focus over fame. Intimacy over headlines. And somehow, that made the gesture even bigger. I've never walked a dog in Florida. Or maybe ever. Leave it to the internet to invent a rumor so specific and so random, it becomes unintentionally hilarious. The claim that Taylor Swift was spotted walking a mystery dog in Florida. No one knows who took the supposed photo. No one knows whose dog it was. No confirmation, no denial, until she addressed it head-on The Tonight Show. And when she did, she didn't come with receipts or anger. She came with a grin. That didn't happen. That's not true. Simple, direct, almost amused. Because here's what most celebrities and PR teams still haven't figured out. Silence isn't weakness, it's control. And Taylor Swift has mastered the art of letting rumors burn themselves out. She could have clapped back on social media. She could have dropped a selfie with her actual cats and said, "No dogs here." Instead, she waited. And then, when it no longer mattered, she gently laughed it off on late-night TV. This isn't about dogs, it's about power. In today's digital world, public figures can't outrun false stories. But what they can do is decide how much oxygen those stories get. And Taylor? She's no longer interested in feeding flames that don't deserve fuel. More importantly, she knows the real stories. like her engagement, her music ownership, her album rollouts, matter more than correcting fan fiction. And every time she lets the noise pass without reacting, she reinforces the persona of someone who's too focused to flinch. Let them run free, she joked about the dogs. It was funny, yes, but also metaphorical, because that's how she treats gossip now, like stray rumors that'll eventually find their way home or disappear altogether. So while the headlines may scream Taylor spotted, she's busy being unbothered, undefeated, and totally cat-aligned. I had to reroute my entire absorption system of my own work. When Taylor Swift first lost the rights to her master recordings in 2019, it wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. It was personal and devastating. For years, she avoided watching her old music videos. She skipped listening to the albums that made her famous. Every time she saw a photo, heard a clip, or recognized a melody from her first 6 records, it felt like something had been taken. But in true Taylor Swift fashion, she didn't fold. She re-recorded them all, and this year, during the Tonight Show interview, she casually dropped the moment fans had been waiting for. I finally got my masters back. The crowd went wild, and so did the internet. But her tone? Calm, grounded, gratified, because this wasn't a sudden win. It was a grind, a silent war fought in studios and contract clauses. And now, the moment has arrived. She described it as still outlandish, even to her. For so long, she'd accepted that she'd never truly own the thing she built. She'd taught herself to look away, to protect herself emotionally. Don't look at the video. Don't get sad. Don't let it ruin your day. That kind of emotional compartmentalization isn't just survival, it's self-preservation. But now? Now she looks at those videos differently. She watches, she listens, she feels pride instead of pain. That shift in emotion, from detachment to ownership, parallels everything. Life of a Showgirl represents taking back your story, refusing to be erased, choosing joy without apology. Her earlier albums, Fearless, Red 1989, don't just sound better, they mean more, because she owns every note, every word, every shimmer of nostalgia. And here's what's truly historic. Taylor Swift didn't just win back her catalog. She changed the industry. Artists everywhere are now negotiating master ownership into their first deals because she made it a global conversation. She didn't just sing about power, she fought for it, and now she wears it like a crown. Thank you for caring about this, she told the audience. But what she really meant was, thank you for giving me the power to fight for what was mine. I had to create a protective layer. I couldn't let those songs in. This is how Taylor Swift describes the years between losing her masters and starting the re-recording process. And that sentence alone captures just how emotionally traumatic the situation really was. Imagine pouring your teenage years, heartbreaks, and identity into music, only to be told that someone else owns it now, that you can't even buy it back, that your memories, your legacy, are someone else's assets. Taylor didn't just walk away from her old music. She shut it out, didn't watch her old music videos, avoided hearing the early albums, trained herself not to feel joy when fans brought them up. Just don't look at it. Don't let it ruin your day. That's not just heartbreak. That's emotional exorcism. And yet, even in that detachment, she was planning, plotting, preparing to take it all back. The Taylor's version era was born not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. She began to re-record every album, every lyric, every instrumental detail, with surgical precision and emotional armor. At first, it wasn't fun. It was clinical, dutiful, but something changed. As the re-recordings started rolling out, fans didn't just listen, they celebrated. They supported her decision loudly. They boycotted the originals. They memorized the Taylor's version tags like badges of honor, and slowly, Taylor began to feel something she hadn't in years: connection. Now I can look at it and just feel proud. That shift from grief to pride mirrors the entire energy of Life of a Showgirl. It's an album made by someone who has forgiven the process, even if she'll never forget the betrayal. Because Taylor isn't just singing as the wounded girl in the spotlight anymore. She's the director, the rights holder, the archivist of her own legacy. She's both performer and producer, and the fans. They didn't just cheer for the comeback. They learned the business. They watched contract language. They cared about rights, all because she made it personal and public. The re-recording era isn't just a footnote in her story. It's a revolution in ownership, emotional resilience, and creative control. And Life of a Showgirl, it's what happens when you survive the fire and walk back on stage in sequins. Deal with the devil. That lyric from Father Figure doesn't just sting, it summarizes what the industry once thought of Taylor Swift. For years, critics labeled her as overcalculated, overexposed, overdramatic. A man-eating serial data, a PR mastermind, a pop robot. And what did she do with all of that? She turned it into content. Blank Space mocked the crazy ex-girlfriend trope with razor-sharp satire. Reputation flipped her villain era into a sold-out tour. And now, Life of a Showgirl takes the next step. It puts all the masks on display, smiles and says, "You still don't know the real me." That's not retreat. That's domination. This is no longer about defending herself. It's about controlling the lens through which she's seen. Taylor has turned narrative manipulation into an art form, not through deception, but through hyper-self-awareness. She knows every rumor, every critique, every meme, and instead of denying them, she incorporates them into the work, like armor. Even in this current era, the sparkly, happy, engaged showgirl phase, there are lines of heat under the surface. She references gossip culture, social media judgment, and fame fatigue, all while twirling in sequins and letting fans think it's light-hearted. I wanted this album to be fun, flirty, but still raw in a different way. And here's the most impressive part. She's made every version of herself profitable. The tortured poet writes an introspective double album that tops the charts. The petty villain sells out. Arena's The Showgirl in Love breaks streaming records. The businesswoman reclaims her masters and sets legal precedents. Even her errors, from public breakups to viral missteps, become future verses. Nothing is wasted. Everything is recycled, reinvented, and profitable. She is, in every sense, a self-made myth who updates the story in real time. And fans, they're not just watching, they're participating, reading the liner notes, analyzing the TikToks, searching for clues. Because Taylor didn't just build an empire, she turned her life into a shared experience. Critics may still misunderstand her, but her audience? They see the scaffolding, the strategy, the sparkles hiding sharp teeth. The empire she's built isn't made of illusions. It's made of versions, and she owns every single one of them. We met in 2008. It was quite a year. Let me tell you, at Selena Gomez's recent wedding, Taylor Swift didn't take the moment to talk about her own engagement. She didn't steal the spotlight. She didn't drop Easter eggs. She did something better. She took everyone back in time to 2008, a year of colorful skinny jeans, deep V-neck tank tops, Chuck Taylors, and tiny vests. A time when two teenage girls, one a rising country singer, the other a Disney star, formed a friendship that would outlast boyfriends, brand deals, scandals, and even social media platforms. Her favorite outfit back then was a very long tank top, the smallest vest you've ever seen, and Chucks. Taylor didn't mock the memory. She celebrated it, not with irony, but with warmth. It wasn't about fashion. It was about who they were before the world saw them as brands. And that's what makes this speech so powerful in the Life of a Showgirl era. Because for an artist who constantly reinvents herself, Taylor still remembers every version. In her own words, this was not the moment to mention her engagement. Nobody wants you to turn it into your moment. It's her day. That choice, humble, sincere, loving, shows the same emotional intelligence that flows through her latest album. Because while Life of a Showgirl sparkles with satire and playfulness, it's grounded in one simple truth. Taylor remembers everything. She remembers when she couldn't get nominated, when she was mocked for writing about her feelings, when no one thought she'd make it past the Speak Now era, and yet here she is, in 2025, watching her best friend walk down the aisle and quietly reflecting on how far they've both come. This moment isn't just a callback to 2008. It's proof that Swift's superpower isn't just reinvention. It's emotional continuity. She can take a single line, a visual, a memory, and thread it across decades. A vest becomes a symbol, a joke becomes a bridge, and a friendship becomes an anchor in a sea of noise. That's what makes her stories stick. They're not just layered, they're lived. Tortured Poets was raw. This is me having fun. With that one sentence, Taylor Swift created a binary that fans instantly latched onto. Was she the damaged writer in the shadows, or the smiling, sequined phoenix dancing under the lights? The truth, of course, is both. And neither. Over the past year, Taylor has embodied two of the most extreme artistic personas in her career. The poet, solemn, introspective, emotionally gutted, the showgirl, flirty, fabulous, feisty and unbothered, and the tonal whiplash between the Tortured Poets department and Life of a Showgirl wasn't a mistake. It was a performance about performance. Sometimes I highlight the parts of myself that are stoic and raw, she said. Other times I want to be funny, tongue-in-cheek, scandalous. This isn't indecision. This is strategy. Taylor has always written in eras, but now she's writing characters. Just like in Blank Space or The Man, Taylor steps into exaggerated versions of public perception and lets them speak. The Tortured Poet was the sad girl meme fully realized. The Showgirl is the tabloid caricature, glamorous, chaotic, unbothered. But within both roles, the real Taylor flickers through. The poet gave us pain in excruciating detail. The Showgirl gives us humor, revenge, and sparkle layered over scars. They're masks, yes, but they're also mirrors. We're all managing public lives now, she said. It's not just about fame. It's about how we curate ourselves for the world. Instagram captions, TikToks, group chats. We're all poets when we're sad. We're all showgirls when we want to be seen. The brilliance of Taylor's latest arc isn't that she picked one side. It's that she let them both exist, unapologetically, glamorously, and deliberately. And that's what Life of a Showgirl is about. It's not the mask. It's the woman who knows she's wearing it and dares you to look anyway. Taylor Swift has always been a master of transformation, from country ingenue to stadium-selling pop star, from reputation villain to folklore recluse. And now, she's standing on stage in a sequined bodysuit, laughing with the crowd, glowing with love, reclaiming her power. One metaphor, one master, one melody at a time. Life of a Showgirl isn't just a new era. It's a reclamation of narrative. An album written not from heartbreak, but from clarity. Not from the ashes, but from the encore. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's flirty. But listen closer, and you'll hear decades of lessons tucked inside the rhinestones. A secret engagement hidden in plain sight. And personas sharpened into armor. Love masters fought for and finally reclaimed. A life once defined by the media, now defined on her terms. It all leaves us wondering, is Taylor Swift finally living her truth, or just writing the next version of it? Because the thing about Showgirls is, you never know where the act ends, and the real woman begins, and maybe, just maybe. That's the point. Now it's your turn. What did you take away from Life of a Showgirl? Do you think this is Taylor's final form, or just the next costume change? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like if this gave you chills, and subscribe for more artist deep dives, music drama breakdowns, and pop culture decoded. Until next time, cue the spotlight.